Hey, Nancy.
Hello, annoying little brother.
Guess what today is?
Hump day.
Hump day. I can't
So we
believe
have
this
a
is
mic
back
in
to
the
that.
firm, everyone, and we send him that video every now and then on Wednesdays. It's the old Geico one with the camel. If you need a good laugh, you got to watch it.
Yeah.
So Arthur, I thought maybe we'd start with fisticuffs en français. What is going on there?
The clip of Macron getting literally face shoved coming off the plane.
By his wife.
Yeah. I would say that's probably not good. Like, I watched it over again. I'm like, come on, it's got to be like something weird. Like, I'm not watching a real feed. That's that's
Yeah,
not good. I mean,
no.
I would have thought maybe she was drunk or something like that, but I watched her go down the steps. She went down the steps. So either she's good at holding her liquor or there's trouble in France.
Well, and they were equating it with his poll numbers too. So I just wondered if you had an opinion on that. But
Yeah, I mean, France is in this no man's land politically. So you've got basically a quasi hung government. You have lawfare where they've basically removed the number one candidate, which is Marine Le Pen, and said she can't run. First ever ruling like this. And honestly, it looks horrible. We had a couple of reversals. I don't know if you, I know you don't follow this crazy stuff, but Sebastian Kurz in Austria was up for perjury charges, which ruined his political career, and he was just exonerated this last week. So there's a lot of lawfare going on. Korea too. You've got. I mean, I'm one of the things we're going to talk about really quickly is tariffs, and there's been no movement on the U.S. Korea tariff front. But that's because, again, they're in the middle of an election because they impeached the,
oh,
the
that's
president because he pulled a coup. I mean, he pulled a coup. This is Korea. This isn't like some African country or some third world Middle Eastern or South American country. This is a first world nation that had an almost coup.
yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
you could make that argument here, I guess, but okay, well then why don't we go around the world with Arthur?
and
You
I'm
know what it
bummed because
reminds me of,
I
Arthur?
said,
It reminds me of the E-Trade commercials where with the baby and that had the beard that was in the crib. And
oh
he talked
yeah,
and
those were great. I was gonna say it reminds me of watching cartoons with my kids and watching Arthur.
All right, what do you got? Tariffs?
Tariffs,
Start.
yeah, we did the Obama bill last week, which I guess just to reiterate to all the listeners, I think if you look at the Obama bill, and Nancy, I think we've talked about this probably ad nauseum. The biggest part is just the making permanent the 2017 tax cuts. If
Yeah.
those things expire, it'll be bad. That would really hurt the economy. That would take growth right down. So the key component of this thing for everybody is basically making the original 2017 Trump tax cuts permanent. That's huge. The other stuff is actually mostly just spending and then means testing on SNAP and Medicare.
Yeah. Yeah, and so not we didn't get, as we talked about last week, we didn't get a cap gains tax cut. We didn't get further cuts in corporate taxes. And are you clear as to whether or not the 100% expensing is just for small business or is it across the board?
It sound well in the House version of the bill. It sounds like it's focused. There's a lot of small business stuff in there. There's getting rid of a lot of stuff like the EV subsidies. Um, there's the Golden Dome. There's stuff like that. But then those are spending programs. The real cuts come from means testing, SNAP, and Medicare, and then also the Doge stuff, getting 12.3 million 120 plus year olds off Social Security rolls. That's where the spending cuts are coming. They're not really reducing benefits. If you're able-bodied and you're on Medicaid or getting SNAP, you have to actually try to work.
And that was a pivotal time in the Clinton administration where they had they decreased welfare by requiring work
Yep.
for benefits, and I think that will be positive if in fact we get if we move in that direction. But, okay, so talk to us about tariffs.
You're right. Like Clinton cut benefits by making them taxable,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
just makes it solvent and reduces the expense side. So you just make it taxable. You just basically paying people less.
and balance the budget.
Yeah, and that was
Yeah,
Clinton. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Okay.
So I thought what I'd do is really quickly, but I'm going to go through, and unfortunately my GIF didn't work very well. I had a America GIF, but this is the America First tariff plan. That's supposed to be a little video of the eagle walking around going, "I'm an American, I'm the boss." Um, but I just gonna go through some of the highlights. The first one is really, are we winning or not winning the tariff kind of negotiation so far? And I think overall, the U.S. and Trump, his proposals so far, I'd say the majority of these we should be considered wins. Um, China, I think clearly this is a win. We imposed a 10% across the board tariff on them. They escalated, we escalated. We're in a 90-day basically truce right now that I think should, right now it's expected to end sometime middle of August. But we hit them with an extra 10%. They basically went back down to the normal rates. So that's a win for us. And I think it meets Trump's criteria of getting more revenues from the 10% base rate. So you see that the highlight of the America First Tariff Plan is a 10% base rate on everybody,
Mhm.
and then try to get better access into the markets where we really don't have fair and free access. China is one of those players. UK, that was a huge win. Starmer capitulated really fast. I was kind of surprised. They're opening up even their ag and markets that typically would be the ones that would be the last um, for a country to come in and compete with local farmers and dairy and stuff like that and food products. But the UK across the board gave us a great deal. So that's clearly a big win for the Trump administration. Really good for American producers and manufacturers and exporters. Next one is India and Mexico. And India, again, this was a no-brainer. This is clearly, there's no way you could say this is not a win. Zero tariffs on 60, and they've been very restrictive to U.S. Goods and services, by the way. Zero tariffs on 60% of
Could you make that type just a teeny bit smaller for me? If just just to really reinforce that I'm your elder.
I can't see. Um, phase out cuts. They got preferential treatment. So basically, if they give anybody else, we got to basically they offered a most favored nation or basically a most favored deal. So if they cut a lower deal on anything, we get it.
Great.
So I mean, I don't see any way that this isn't a win for the U.S. And by the way, I think it's a win for India. And more importantly, I think India has really realized that with all the fighting we're doing with China, they could easily supplant, and this would hugely increase their growth rates if they have more reciprocal trade with us, because the trade with us actually is pretty small.
That's
And it just
awesome.
means they have to negotiate with Trump, and so he won. Mexico was a win. I'm going to count as a win. They put 10,000 troops on the border. We said do it or else. We still slapped them with a 10% on anything that's not under the free trade agreement already. We went after the steel. They were going to talk about reciprocal tariffs, and they capitulated on all reciprocal tariffs. So we put stuff on them. They didn't put it us. They put soldiers on the border, and like we told them to, for fentanyl and national security, and that's a win.
Win-win, win.
Win-win. The next one's my kind of funny one. So Canada is a kind of notable carve out at Carney, the new prime minister, came over here. They had a great meeting, but I'm saying this is Carney's dilemma. This is the odd man out. No golden umbrella for you, a hoser. Take off. So they're not. They haven't reciprocated with tariffs on us. We have hit them, but nothing's going on here since the initial meeting. We basically said, get fentanyl. We want fentanyl drugs to stop coming across the border. We punish them for that. They've got a free trade agreement, so it's not impacting them much, but they basically flat out said they're not going to open up dairy and meat and all these other things that Mexico already has opened up, and so does the UK. So right now, I don't know what's going on with Canada, but this is not a win right now. We're taxing them more, and they're eating it, but not good for them.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
too big a trading partner to be messing around with the U.S. They should capitulate, at least some, to save face and to keep trade going. But this is
right.
not going to be good for them.
Yeah.
And then I got two more slides. And the next one is European Union, Japan, and South Korea. And I don't know if anybody's heard this taco phrase that traders are throwing out. So I made a little parody of it because actually I think it's a garbage phrase, but it's funny in this context. So the EU, I see Trump's Taco Tuesday. So yesterday he said he was going to put 50% tariffs on them. Taco Tuesday, and the taco. What does it mean? Trump always chickens out. And one, clearly not true. It's just a nasty. It is nasty. The president said it was a nasty thing to say. It's not only nasty, it's stupid because he's winning.
Oh, he commented on it?
Oh yeah, or some idiot reporter asked him in the White House, and he said, "That's a nasty question to ask me. It's not basically it's not true." And you know what? Trump's right. I mean, I just went through like UK, India. These are big trade deals. The EU, the biggest problem with the EU is that you're not dealing with a single leader. You're dealing with the EU
Right.
itself. So there's
Yeah.
all these internal negotiations of every individual country's incentives for a different tariff regime for them versus another country. So it's not surprising that the EU has just kind of been floundering because it's like herding cats. But Trump got them to say, okay, we're going to fast track. So he said 50%, and they said, whoa, 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 we'll set up a fast track committee uh, to get. So I think it's going to be a win. That's probably the second largest trading bloc on the planet. So any improvement there for access to those markets by U.S. manufacturers is going to be a win because they have definitely kept us out at our detriment. And we've given them much better deals. It's time we got a better deal. So I think this one's going to have some teeth. I think they're going to capitulate. They've got to.
Interesting.
Japan's weird. No deal, by the way, in Japan.
Didn't
It's
know
kind of
that.
stalling out there. Sorry, you go back one slide. Japan hasn't got a deal, and there's not really any negotiations going on there. And then the last one is South Korea, and I think I mentioned a minute ago, Nancy. They had an impeachment. You have elections going on right now to see who's going to be the next president of South Korea. And they've been very silent too. And this is a big one for steel and autos. Their markets are pretty closed. So any improvement will be good. Same thing goes with Japan too.
So, it's so interesting what we heard in earnings season was you have a company like Home Depot that said, we're not passing along the price increases. We're going to try to gain share from Lowe's or whomever is passing along the price increases. But then we also heard from Walmart that they are going to raise prices and they probably have a little more justification because their prices already are so low. But it is interesting to see how the tariffs are being um, treated at the company level. And, when Walmart said that, famously the president said, I'm watching you, Walmart. It's just- I feel like I'm in like, I don't know, what was the show with Daddy's Home or whatever? It just feels
Mm.
very old. I know, sorry, you wouldn't have even known it. But,
Because you
well,
know that I watch that kind of stuff, so there's a pretty good chance I would remember it.
I know. Make room for daddy. That was it with no? Okay.
No,
Sorry.
sorry. But
Okay.
here's the upside for Walmart. Um, that consumer segment is really benefiting from lower gas prices. Gas prices
Yeah.
affect that segment of consumer, the typical Walmart shopper, much more so than like a Nordstrom's
Right.
or like a higher end.
Right. No, you're
So
right.
maybe they can because that
Yeah.
consumer is getting
No,
attacked.
and they already are the significantly low price producer. I mean, let us see what happens with Target, but it looks like for the most part they've taken a serious amount of share from Target. Thankfully, we got out of it a long time ago, but Target that is, and Walmart's our only staple in most of our portfolios. But they can. I think he just is a little prickly about whether or not people say that they're raising prices because of the tariffs. So now all the CEOs, many of them are trying to figure out how to say they're raising prices without mentioning the tariffs.
Make containers smaller, shrinkflation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And then the last one I want to talk about it was, and I really don't need to say much here, but Taiwan was a huge win. Taiwan is incredibly dependent upon the U.S., not just economically but militarily. And they basically proposed, I think, initially like a zero tariff relationship with the U.S. I wouldn't be surprised if we cut some kind of immigration. Maybe that $5 million golden visa thing would be a lot of Taiwanese coming over here because TSMC is making huge investments. They're strategically very important because chips. Yep,
Here in
that's right. They're in
Arizona.
Arizona. Yep,
Yeah, 2 plants, huge, yeah.
yep.
Um,
So
well,
that's all I
great.
got, Nancy.
That's it. That's awesome. Thank you. That's really helpful. All right. Well, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Wall Street, my favorite subject to pick apart. I just thought it'd be interesting for the viewers because many people pay attention to the markets every day, and of course we do, but a lot of other people do as well. And the volatility can be very taxing. And so one of the things that has stood out to me is how frequently, and this we're only in May, how frequently Wall Street has flip-flopped on their targets, their price targets for the market, the S&P specifically, for the end of the year. And so you have, I'm just going to give 2 examples, but if anyone's interested in getting all of the examples of the major houses, you can just reach out to the team at Laffer Tengler. But pardon me, JP Morgan went from a year-end target of 6,500 to 5,200 on April 7th, which was right before what was Liberation Day. And then right after that, the president pivoted or tacoed, I guess you could say. And then their worst case at that point was the S&P retreating to 4,000. And that would have been a significant correction, obviously, because at that point we were around 55, a little bit above 5,500. And then the market rallied and they raised their target back to 6,500 after the market rallied in late April and early May. So it's very difficult to make money if you're following these flip-flops on estimates, and strategists don't, they don't really get held accountable for their estimates, but it does drive market volatility. And then Goldman went from 6,500 to 6,200 to 5,900 and then back up to 6,100 from January to May. So there's not much information in there, and I would just encourage people to step away and not pay attention to that noise because they get a lot of airtime. But during that same period at LTI, we were buying in early April, and in equity income, we bought Microsoft, which is up over 25% since then. We sold some names that went down. That's the best work we do often for our clients is the names that we didn't get into in the first place or we got out of expecting things to deteriorate further. And one of the examples of that is on March 10th, we sold Dell and it's down 26.5%. And we added Williams, which is up over 12%. So, and Williams is a natural gas pipeline company, among other things, but we're very bullish on natural gas. And can you believe it? I mean, natural gas stoves almost got eliminated
Yeah.
in Manhattan just a few short months ago. Um, and then we exited some other names like AMD and added to ServiceNow and Palantir, and both those names are up around 40%. And then, of course, Tesla, which we've been talking about, we were adding to it in March, and the stock's up over 50% from there. So, Elon continues to be the man that everyone loves to hate and underestimate, and he has had more comebacks than any athlete I've ever seen on the planet. It's remarkable. He teeters near the edge of disaster, and then he pulls back just in time, pivots, and turns something into gold. It's crazy, and maybe he is, but
Crazy smart. Crazy
crazy
like
smart,
Fox,
wicked smart, as you would say.
right? Wicked smart.
And so I had a chart. I don't know if we're showing charts today. I mean, you had your PowerPoint showing me up completely, but it just kind of showed the momentum. Oh, here it is. It just miraculously appeared. I circled where we were buying technology. And at this point, this was March and April. What you were hearing on the financial news networks was that the technology trade was over. And that would be the third time I've heard that from the pundits, if you will, in the last 3 years. The previous 2 summers, we got the same thing. It looks like the tech trade's over, and then we got the deep seek news, at which we call deep fake, in January, and everybody said, well, yeah, all the AI names sold off. They, the Chinese can build a better model with no money, basically. And then all the hyperscalers said, we're doubling down on our commitments, and they've been fast and furiously adding capacity. And that's the one thing we heard in the fourth quarter and the first quarter, that companies like Amazon, Google, Meta, and Microsoft could have grown their cloud AI business faster, but they were capacity constrained. They didn't have enough chips. There weren't enough data centers available, and the data centers too sold off. Remember, in January, and now they're back to and above the levels where they sold off. So again, caution to the viewer: if you like the company you own or the manager that you've hired potentially, you stick with it, because the short-term noise is not the smart money anymore. It used to be, I guess. That's why they called it the smart money, but it has not been for a long time. And I've talked about that on Macro Micro Moment, where the average hedge fund is up an annualized 8% over the last 10 years. Our most conservative strategy has an annualized return over the last 10 years of 13%, and you're not paying us 2 and 20, which, those are gross of fee numbers. So the hedge funds are not, they've had a hard time outperforming for the last decade and even longer. So you buy great companies, you hold on to them, you turn off the news when it becomes too much, you don't look at your statements, and you continue to add to high quality names. We had Brian Belsky on not that long ago, and Brian and I and Byron from our office had dinner out here in Scottsdale, and he said, "I'm going to start a podcast where I'm going to ask the guest what their favorite, what their 3 favorite rock stars songs are." And uncharacteristically, and I think this is true about me, I was like, "Oh, can I go first?" And one of my favorites that I was listening to earlier today is Tom Petty's "I Won't Back Down." And I think in the market, sometimes you have to not back down and stay the course. I would say almost always. Sometimes it's great to cut your losses. And I talked about some of the places where we did that. But generally speaking, stocks go up 2/3 of the years. And so you want to be long stocks in the portion that you've allocated to your portfolio. Bears always sound smarter because they can tell you everything that's wrong, kind of like bond guys, Byron. But equities require optimism and a focus on earnings. And lastly, let me just say, not only did earnings come in great, the analysts were expecting single-digit earnings growth. We got 14% earnings growth in Q1. That's backward looking. But so then what we would say to that is, what was the guidance? And the guidance increases rose 4.9%, which is in the 63rd percentile of all periods previously. And guidance cut fell 5.7%, which was just slightly more than the long run average. So what we were bracing ourselves for was a lot of suspended guidance and guidance cuts, but we in fact did not get that.
Well, I think the tariff risks that drove the market, I think was that negative news. Like, those were serious tariffs. People weren't sure what Trump was going to do, and so they started hedging their bets. Like, what was it like? There was this tit for tat with China. It got up to what,
40%, yeah.
150% tariffs.
Yeah.
And when those things go away, people were already stockpiling. What was that example? Like, was it an Apple that filled up like 9 jumbo jets full of
Right.
iPhones, and to get in front of the tariffs? And now the tariffs have gone down, so they front loaded all this supply.
He's not very happy with Tim Cook.
That's because Tim should be building his phones here, right?
Yeah, so we can all pay $3,500 for a phone.
But one of the things we didn't talk about is fast tracking the uranium and other projects. So this 2-week turnaround, we just I think it was the first time we've fast tracked a uranium mine in the U.S. and I don't know how long. Nuclear reactors too. We've talked about energy and robotics and stuff, and these huge server farms that need tons of power, and how these guys are like, was Microsoft, and didn't they say wanted to put an actual nuke reactor for one of their facilities?
Yeah, the smaller ones. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that's right. I think that is
stuff.
important. And we we talked about this for a long time. You need cobalt in all of the sort of clean energy kind of offerings. And we had a cobalt mine that was being built for 10 years. They kept changing the regulations. And finally, the owner of the mine just shut it down
Yeah.
because they couldn't afford it. So I think we're running a little bit long, but should we do some stocks to watch?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about some stocks?
I
Nancy
think so.
stocks to watch?
Maybe three. Oh, my shoe pusher at Saks just sent me a text, so we have to go pretty quickly. But they always have pictures too, which is deadly. Okay, I want to talk about three names. NVIDIA reported after the market closed. Now we've been on here, but it looks like the report was well received by Wall Street. The China disappointment was not nearly as disappointing as expected. Remember, they were their H20 sales to China were banned by the government. And as a reminder, by this administration, the H20 was redesigned per the Biden rules. So, but Blackwell continues to be the dominant chip. And I would point out that we talked about this on Macro Micro Moment a couple months ago, but Larry Ellison, CEO or now chairman of Oracle, and Elon Musk went and had dinner with Jensen Huang, and the news afterwards was from Elon Musk, where he said, "We just kept saying, can we have more chips? More chips, please. We'd like to buy more chips. Can we have more chips?" And if you look at, we both use Grok. If you look at the difference between having the super high quality, fast chips versus, that was a rookie mistake, having your phone ring.
I know, God. The horror.
Versus the slower versions like Copilot, or I would argue even ChatGPT at the moment, it makes a difference. And so the earnings, I think the market's going to receive those earnings very well tomorrow. And that is a name that we were adding to during, the terrible tariff twos. And that's been a great decision for us. And then the other name is a name we don't own, which is Salesforce. And they came out and beat pretty robustly. They announced an acquisition this week, Informatica. We think that we're going to see M&A start to pick up across sectors, and that's going to be good for some of the names we own, like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, that have the investment banking element. And then one name that I talked about on CNBC this week, and I think it may be time to take a fresh look at it, is Starbucks. So remember, previous CEO, bad. New CEO, very good. Brian Niccol came from Chipotle, where he turned the company around. Remember, after the, I don't know if it was E. coli in the food, but they had a serious problem from an integrity of the quality of the food standpoint. He turned that around. Before that, he was at Taco Bell and did the same. So he said last quarter on the earnings call that he was had his optimism had now turned to confidence, and they're investing in labor because they think the throughput on quality and speed of orders is through labor, but they're also testing an algorithm that has speeded up the delivery of online orders by 2.5 minutes. That's a big deal.
That's
New
big deal.
CFO, she's got a lot of urgency, and she's been associated with a number of turnarounds. So I think, we talk a lot about management and how important it is. I think this is now the time to step into the stock on the fundamentals. We owned it. We were toying with selling it. They fired Laxman, which was the previous CEO. The stock shot up over 20% because on the news of Brian Niccol, and then it sold off again on China tariffs. Now all of that's behind us, and I think fundamentally the company is driving traffic, and they're focusing on areas where they're not very good, where they don't have a lot of penetration, like Middle America. So I think you'll see incremental growth in Starbucks as we come out of here the next year, out of the next 12 months. So that's
It's
all.
funny. You talk about active management and like doing research, fundamental research, and so much stuff is quantified nowadays. You just get a spreadsheet, you can get a Fidelity account or whatever, and you can get all this information thrown at you. And then you get a story like Starbucks, and it's like, you want to see why good management of these really large companies matters. this is why it matters, because when you get it wrong, it can be
Like
disastrous.
Target did.
Boeing,
Target got it
Target,
wrong.
yeah, or, Starbucks before. Yeah, I mean, you can ruin a company very quickly with bad management, and you can have
Yeah.
a company that is say would be an average performer become a top performer.
Yeah. Well, you're right about that, Arthur, because like Starbucks has, I mean, I'm sorry, Target has the distinct advantage or privilege of now alienating both sides of the DEI trade. So they credited this last quarter's disappointment with progressives boycotting the store, and before that, remember they sort of offended traditional families with the transgender 6-year-old swimsuits. So shot themselves in the foot twice. And but the culture at that company is dead. The board still supports um, Brian. Oh God, I forgot his name now because it's forgettable. Who's the CEO? And they're going to replace him. He's retiring with somebody from within. Whereas when Starbucks hired Brian Nickel, they made that decision overnight. He came in and he cleaned house, and that is what you have to do when you have a stale culture. So you're absolutely right. The research matters, and it's shown up in our returns. All the equity strategies are outperforming the S&P this year with significantly less risk.
I mean, and I think one of your favorite
In the
sayings is
last 3 years, by
don't,
the way, sorry.
don't invest your politics. It's amazing. I was always amazed at companies like, look, we'll use Disney. I'll pick on Disney because I don't particularly like what the brand's done. But it's like they want to get into this political mix. And what are the three things we're taught? We were taught, I don't know if it's taught anymore, that you never discuss with people, politics, religion, and what's the other one? So
I think it's just those two.
just politics, religion. I mean, and yet these companies have integrated the political discussion into their product and business lines. And you kind of look around going, why would you do that? I mean, you're
Right.
selling popcorn or you're selling coffee or you're selling widgets, whatever. Like, why would you inject that into the consumer's mind that you're going to take a position? And so now they're going, I can go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I can not buy your products.
And it was just 3 years ago when Brian Cornell, I finally remembered his name, who is the CEO of Target, was considered to be one of the top retailers in the world. And he's no longer considered to be that, as this company has shrunk in terms of sales and growth. So we've moved away. We moved away a long time ago out of Target and moved into TJ Maxx, which is also sort of tariff proof. And I think I talked about that last week, where they buy inventories from companies that aren't selling stuff that's already here in America. So anyway, so
Cool.
those are the names we're watching now. Look for the market to open probably pretty strong on the NVIDIA earnings, unless they said something dumb on the call while we were on this, but I don't think that will happen. So thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you,
so much.
everybody.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
All right. Take care. Have a nice week. Oh, great. I get the camel. At least it's not the other end.